Greetings, everyone. I'm James with Firebrand and the Denver Communists. We're about coming up on 3 years old, I think, at the end of this year. We have branches in Seattle and New York and Boston, as well as at-large members scattered across the country. We're formed by branches that stayed together after the ISO dissolved in 2019. So I'm really honored to speak alongside comrades from the MST, Socialist Alternative, and Socialist Horizon. And thanks to all who came to listen, speak, and discuss and try to grind out this problem together. And thanks to Socialist Horizon comrades for putting this together and for getting us involved. So crisis and cruelty are inevitable under capitalism. Resistance to them is also inevitable, but the success of that resistance is contingent on the ideas and practices taken up by it. Revolutionary organization is meant to develop and spread ideas and practices that can win. Revolutionaries come together to understand and change the world. We study the history of class struggle. We learn from our political forebears. We learn from the exploited and oppressed, including those around us and those nowhere near us in space or time. We attempt to synthesize what we learn into a coherent conception of society and to a plan of attack on it. That's Marxism in a nutshell. Engels identified three interconnected forms of struggle: the economic, the political, and the ideological. In economic struggle, workers fight our bosses. In political struggle, we fight the boss's state. And in ideological struggle, we fight against the ideas that the bosses have installed like malware into our brains. In political and economic struggle, we fight against our enemies. But in ideological struggle, we fight against our enemies' ideas in the minds of our allies. Those ideas, the ruling ideas, seek to justify the existing arrangement of society and to foreclose any possibility of system change. Revolutionary organization brings together the more advanced elements of the working class to systematically counter the influence of the ruling ideas. This involves what I like to call intra-left combat, mostly against liberalism and reformism, the dominant ideas in social movements, but also against ultra-leftism and the various socialisms from above, which also lead struggle in the wrong direction. Ultimately, the purpose of the Revolutionary Party is to organize the insurrection. But in the meantime, it must win countless lesser battles and debates within the movement. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Our immediate task is not to build a revolutionary party, but to grow and improve our tiny propaganda groups, and when it makes sense, to merge them. We must not overestimate our capabilities and our tasks. We can't fast forward to an effective revolutionary party just because we desperately need to. Our situation is undoubtedly urgent, but we must be diligent and patient with goals so modest as to seem disrespectful of that urgency, like getting 20 people to read Rosa Luxemburg together. Overestimating our capabilities and our current tasks, or catastrophizing about our predicament can lead to opportunism, adventurism, or a combination of both. That could look like tailing a movement's politics in order to recruit, papering over significant differences in order to fuse groups, or going underground prematurely because fascism seems to be at the door. Our immediate task is not to build mass organization based on joint activity, but cadre organization based on a clear and coherent set of politics. Cadre is a military term swiped by socialists to mean the core activists of a revolutionary organization, dedicated opponents of the system, thinkers and fighters, students and teachers, and what Gramsci called permanent persuaders. Such an organization must strive to become a relevant fighting force, but its near-term interventions will be more ideological than practical. We can't snap our fingers and materialize a mass revolutionary party, but developing cadre and building interventionist propaganda groups, to borrow a term from Socialist Alternative, we can lay the necessary foundation. To our Socialist Horizon comrades, we need each other. This was made particularly clear by the domination of the Palestine Solidarity Movement by Social Democrats, Stalinists, and Maoists, and then made more clear by the campus left's reaction to the fall of Assad. We're alone in a wilderness of garbage politics. We belong together, but only on a firm foundation. We're in close political agreement. Justin recently said that we're more politically united than the Bolsheviks on the eve of revolution, and I tend to agree, though there are a lot of disagreements. But I don't think that's Justin's point. Um, we do share a political lineage. We share a focus on class struggle and class independence. And on anti-oppression and social movements. We both reject electoralism and campism. But we need to agree on strategy too, specifically on cadre building, propaganda, and socialist intervention. Uh, we should organize around a clear and specific set of politics rather than around common work. It makes no sense for us to combine with those pointing toward the Squad and the Democratic Party or Chavismo or the so-called axis of resistance or a protracted people's war or communes or co-ops as the way forward. These politics are incompatible with ours and must be debated and defeated, ultimately, not accommodated to or invited into our organizations. And we need to shed any hesitation about the need to argue with people, about the need for polemic, and for focusing on what distinguishes our politics from the rest of the left. In Firebrand, we think we're stronger on our own than those that do not take up this basic strategy, which seems to us like basic Leninism. But to wrap up, the approach I've sketched out here underpins our dedication to the study of the history of class struggle and to Marxist theory, strategy, and tactics, which are no more than the synthesized lessons of that history. It's the motivation for learning to think, argue, and fight together as Marxists, for standing with the rebels on picket lines and against riot lines, come what may, for all the meetings and readings and writings and kickoffs and report backs and discussions, for making hard arguments about what should be done next at crucial junctures in a movement, for building locally while reaching for higher levels of national organization and international connection, for flying our red flag high as a signal to all who might take at least a few steps forward with us. We may be few, we may be unable to flex as fully as we'd like to at this point, but we do have a firm grasp on genuine Marxism and Leninism. They're the best tool set for understanding the compounding crises and cruelties of capitalism and the best tool set for organizing its downfall. And I'm looking forward to using them together with you, comrades, more effectively. So glad to be at the table with you, comrades in Socialist Horizon, back at the table, and glad to be in the struggle with you all until victory.
All right. Thank you, comrade. Powerful. Very nice. Appreciate that. Kim, have you located your presentation? All right.
Yes.
Outstanding.
Yes.
Well, this is going to follow, Kim's is going to follow really nicely from James, because I know this is a great presentation. Go for it, Kim.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. In this presentation, I hope to lay out a picture of the material circumstances we find ourselves in as revolutionary socialists here in the USA today. We as revolutionaries have the intention of organizing differently to the two main forms of political trends on the left, the first being reformism, as is represented by the politics of the DSA, Bernie Sanders, and AOC, and the other by a myriad of Stalinist organizations. Our orientation is instead one based on socialism from below, i.e. a Leninist project, which involves creating an organization with a clear political point of view that endeavors to engage with mass movements, strikes, rebellions, and revolutionary upheavals. Growing the numbers of highly class-conscious and committed revolutionary workers via this participation allows us to build up an ever larger, stronger project capable of leading the struggle against ruling classes nationally and internationally. We have the aim of overthrowing the capitalist state and replacing it with a socialist society, aiming ultimately to become a communist one. In the US, we have a system of two proudly capitalist parties who differ largely in style versus substance. Republican and Democrats are committed to repressing and exploiting the working classes and oppressed groups. The government's configuration determined by the capitalist ruling class makes any attempt at any alternative voice within government, let alone building an alternative reformist third party, impossible. As we know, the Democratic Party, with the full agreement of the Republican Party, is responsible for financing the murder of 65,000 people and the displacement of 2 million people in the Gaza genocide to the tune of $21 million in the last 18 months. I think it's critical we start our analysis with the genocide, given the Democratic Party is considered by unions and millions of others as the party of workers and oppressed communities. Their willingness to finance a genocide for the purpose of controlling the mining, processing, and distribution of Black gold clearly puts that lie to bed. Democratic administrations and Republican administrations alike endlessly attack migrants via Border Patrol, ICE, detention centers, remain in Mexico policy, and mass deportations. They criminalize vast numbers of human beings by falsely claiming that they are, quote, muling fentanyl, or, quote, perpetuating crime, and, quote, using resources meant for native-born citizens to scapegoat undocumented immigrants and asylum seekers. They do this as they need to deflect their own responsibility for the conditions faced by underpaid native-born workers struggling to access groceries, rent, and health care. Additionally, attacking and repressing migrant workers while simultaneously hiring them is critical, as it provides bosses with a highly controlled and therefore more exploitable and disposable workforce. While the Democrats failed at increasing the minimum wage, creating national health care, ending government student loans, or addressing the climate crisis, they succeeded at crushing unions, expanding fracking, bombing countries across the globe, and enabling the genocide we are currently witnessing in Palestine. The shock and awe from the endless executive orders handed down by Trump since his first day in office and their repercussions have rattled workers, seniors, and oppressed communities' senses of well-being and actual well-being, causing protests on campuses and in cities large and small across the country that have been led mostly by either pro-Palestine groups or liberal pro-Democratic Party organizations. The New World Order will have consequences that cannot be addressed by these means and will rather require radical mass protests, strikes, and rebellions. Today, we see that migrants of every status, trans people, queer people, and those who can become pregnant are all in the crosshairs, as are people of color and disabled individuals. We see attacks on DEI, gutting the federal public education system, curtailing FEMA, firing tens of thousands of federal workers, and ending union rights for hundreds of thousands, hobbles and potentially ends state programs from Head Start to cancer research. Xenophobia of every type will continue to be promoted by the media, bosses, and politicians. Liberals will continue to liberal, promoting business unions, Democratic politicians, and the courts as the answer to the crisis for which all of the reasons I shared above will undoubtedly fail. The endless chaos Trump has ushered in has the whole country/world on edge. The changes to international financial arrangements, from the free trade globalization of the last several decades to the isolationist tariffs on a seemingly endless roller coaster, will in fact hasten a world recession as corporations and governments make decisions about how and whether to invest, to buy and sell stocks, land, corporations, and raw materials, and potentially to engage in open warfare for the Panama Canal, Greenland, Iran, as well as continue the wars over Gaza and Ukraine. This precariousness will inevitably lead to large-scale inflation, layoffs, foreclosures, hunger, homelessness, misery, and death. The consequences of these actions will cause millions of people to look right, but millions of others will look left. As revolutionary socialists, we know we live in a global capitalist and imperialist system that without a mass fight from millions of workers here in the US and hundreds of millions around the world, will continue down this disastrous road. We don't know when mass struggle will break out, but we can be sure it will happen, suddenly and explosively, as we are currently seeing in Argentina. We know from living in the belly of the beast that each person who becomes a revolutionary socialist will become a leader, and the leadership they can each offer matters. Nature abhors a vacuum. The Democrats expect to win big in 18 months, but the damage is already well underway, and neither party can stop the existing and impending crisis. It is critical that we come together to fight for revolutionary organization across the US and internationally, and in fact is the only way we can win. We can't know where rebellions will explode. We know that they will happen. The more that comrades in communities, states, countries, and even continents are tied together through serious socialist organization, the more possible successful revolutions become. Revolution is not a pipe dream. It is an inevitable circumstance and reaction to the injustices felt throughout the world today. And we as revolutionary socialists need to be ready to respond effectively to bring about once and for all the fall of capitalism and imperialism. And for this to happen, we need a united and strong revolutionary socialist organization. Today, we in many ways find ourselves in an inverse world to that of the one Lenin built with the Bolsheviks. Unlike Lenin and the Bolsheviks, we do not live in a barely capitalized society where 90% of the population are peasants who'd only become free of serfdom 30 years prior. On the contrary, in 2025, our world is overwhelmingly developed with the capacity to create wealth in abundance, including food, housing, healthcare, and all the necessities everyone could require for a meaningful life. What is not inverse and makes the need for an organization that aspires to become a Leninist party is the size and character of the ruling class and its states. Laws, courts, police, prisons, ICE, BPS, detention centers inside and outside of US borders, weaponry, the Army, Navy, Air Force, National Guard. Additionally, the ownership of mainstream media, the regulation of primary education and higher education, and most silently, but most powerfully, corporate power over workers with the capacity to hire, fire, and dictate conditions of employment. And in the US, of course, also the only way to access quality healthcare. That overwhelming capitalist infrastructure, if you will, means the state is intensely powerful, organized, and institutionalized. Our one opportunity to end this tyranny lies in our ability to organize ourselves, not only to strike, but to make those strikes meaningful by building a mass revolutionary party out of them. I hope this information will be helpful in framing why it's so critical we begin working towards such a formation as soon as possible. Bringing existing revolutionary organizations who believe in revolutionary struggle from below and are moving towards ever greater political agreement matters in today's dire national and international circumstances. We need a party that's opposed to both capitalist parties. We need an organization that's clear on the critical need to build an explicitly Leninist party. Capitalism is global. Revolutionary socialists must be international if there's any hope of an ultimate victory. We will not win if we do not oppose Stalinism and reformism and actively organize an anti-fascist movement. Workers will never take control of society and win a revolution if they are divided. Fighting every form of oppression is critical. I look forward to discussing these thoughts with all of you in a more detailed way this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you for reminding us of the need for ourselves to organize and to do this internationally, that we can only win working class revolution by joining hands across borders, and which is why we are so happy to have two of our comrades here from across those borders. And I want to turn now to our third speaker, Alejandro Bodart from the Argentine MST. I want to clarify something I said earlier about listening to Alejandro's presentation. His presentation will be in Spanish. If you go to the little circle with the three dots on the bottom of your screen on your bar, and you click on it, you'll have an interpretation bar will pop up. If you wish to listen to Alejandro's discussion in English, choose the English option. Okay, so is that clear? Otherwise, you will hear it in Spanish. So if folks want to take a second to make sure that their setting is in English, then we can go ahead and hand it over to Alejandro. So thank you, Alejandro, for coming. We're really honored that you're here, and we look forward to hearing your discussion. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Bueno, buenos días a todos. ¿Se escucha bien? ¿Están todos en el canal adecuado?
Sí,
Bueno, en primer lugar, felicitaciones a los compañeros que organizaron esta actividad. Creo que este debate se da en un momento muy importante porque estamos presenciando una reconfiguración del orden imperialista mundial. Ustedes están en el país donde el presidente Trump es el que está impulsando esto. Daría para hacer un debate, ¿no?, entre todos nosotros para terminar de interpretar bien lo que está pasando, porque hay cambios muy de carácter histórico, podríamos decir. Porque está muriendo lo que el viejo orden mundial de posguerra, lo que quedaba de ese viejo orden mundial de posguerra, lo que había sobrevivido a la caída del estalinismo, está cayendo. Está cayendo la globalización como política o como orientación que se dio el imperialismo triunfante de la Guerra Fría. Y por lo tanto estamos en un momento de transición donde está cayendo lo viejo y todavía no se sabe bien qué es lo que vendrá. Ahora, como socialistas revolucionarios, sabemos que el trasfondo de estos cambios es que la crisis capitalista, sobre todo la que se abrió en el 2008, no se ha cerrado. El imperialismo no ha logrado cerrar esa crisis. El imperialismo estadounidense se fue debilitando. Le salieron, nosotros decimos, le salió el tiro por la culata porque creyó, con la caída de la Unión Soviética, que iba a lograr semicolonizar a los países donde se restauró el capitalismo, pero eso no sucedió. Los principales países de la vieja Unión Soviética y del arco del socialismo real terminaron transformándose en competidores del imperialismo estadounidense y del imperialismo occidental. E incluso surgió China como un imperialismo, un competidor global, y hay una disputa interimperialista en curso. Trump la quiere resolver como un cowboy, yendo a intentar por la fuerza forzar un nuevo orden. Lo más probable, estamos en un momento donde más que primar un orden hay un gran desorden mundial, por eso las idas, las vueltas, ¿no es cierto?, de este hombre, pero lo que nosotros vemos es que la salida que van a intentar los distintos sectores del imperialismo va a ser un ataque global a los derechos de los trabajadores y de los pueblos. Ya lo estamos viendo, ¿no? Ustedes lo están viendo en Estados Unidos, pero es parte de una ofensiva global, sectores de la burguesía que ya empiezan a apostar por fuerzas de ultraderecha, porque la democracia como tal ya no les sirve para poder aplicar los planes que intentan aplicar, y por lo tanto, en muchos lugares del mundo, la opción que están teniendo es la de apoyar gobiernos de ultraderecha que vienen a intentar arrasar con los derechos conquistados de los trabajadores, de las minorías, de los inmigrantes. Esto plantea un problema porque va a haber resistencia del movimiento obrero y de masa. Ya hay resistencia, pero esto se va a ir profundizando cada vez más, porque el ataque es tan global que el movimiento de masas no va a dejar de que avancen sin dar pelea. Por eso sí, vamos a un mundo donde va a haber muchas luchas, muchas resistencias, rebeliones, revoluciones, guerras, porque el imperialismo en su afán de intentar fortalecerse va a fomentarlos. De hecho, lo estamos viendo, lo hemos visto en Ucrania, estamos viendo una ofensiva brutal sobre el pueblo palestino. Esto se va a intensificar. Ahora, el gran problema es cuál es la tarea de los revolucionarios en este mundo que está provocando cambios y una intención cada vez mayor del imperialismo, de las burguesías, de atacar a los trabajadores. ¿Cuál es la tarea que tenemos? Porque el gran problema que tenemos los trabajadores y los pueblos es que damos pelea, pero con los brazos atados, porque no tenemos al frente una dirección revolucionaria para enfrentar la magnitud del ataque que estamos viviendo. Por eso nosotros somos unos convencidos de que la gran tarea que tenemos los revolucionarios es tratar de colaborar, de ayudar a construir la dirección que hace falta. Y que esa tarea para nosotros tiene un primer punto, o sea, no es solo una tarea nacional, es una tarea internacional, porque es muy difícil que desde un país logremos resolver el problema de la dirección si no somos parte también de una organización a nivel internacional. Ahora, ¿cómo hacer esa dirección que hace falta? ¿Cómo empezar a dar los primeros pasos para ello? Porque hay distintos niveles de acumulación en los distintos países. No es lo mismo, hay países donde hay cierto grado de acumulación mayor que otros. Ustedes están en un país donde venimos de una catástrofe, porque la organización revolucionaria que se había construido durante años y años y años, cuando más se la necesitaba, explotó, que es la hizo, ¿no es cierto? Y por lo tanto hay un nivel de atomización muy grande. Pero a nivel internacional, más allá de que hay países donde tenemos más acumulación que otros, pasa lo mismo, lo que prima es la dispersión. Nosotros creemos que la tarea más importante que tenemos los revolucionarios es intentar reagruparnos, reagrupar las fuerzas revolucionarias. No hay ninguna corriente en el plano internacional que por sí sola pueda responder bien a esta tarea, ni tampoco hay a nivel nacional ningún grupo que por sí solo pueda responder y resolver este problema. Por eso el desafío mayor que nosotros creemos que tenemos los revolucionarios es hacer los máximos esfuerzos por reagruparnos entre nosotros. Con un objetivo, porque no es solo juntarnos por juntarnos, sino reagruparnos, reagruparnos para intentar dar los pasos en la construcción de una alternativa revolucionaria. Después podremos discutir los ritmos que tome esto y qué tan rápido podamos avanzar o no. Pero si no empezamos a reagruparnos con el objetivo de construir alternativas revolucionarias, tanto en el plano internacional como nacional, nosotros creemos que no estamos respondiendo al desafío de la hora. Nosotros venimos de una experiencia, la Liga Internacional Socialista. Es un gran reagrupamiento internacional de distintas corrientes que hemos decidido juntarnos, venimos de distintas experiencias. En la Liga Internacional Socialista convivimos compañeros de varias de las familias que hemos conformado el trotskismo después de la Segunda Guerra Mundial. Nosotros creemos que todas esas familias que se fueron conformando jugaron un rol importante, que es mantener la llama revolucionaria en una etapa negra que nos tocó vivir, fortalecimiento del estalinismo, ¿no es cierto? Un momento muy difícil, pero que como proyectos individuales ya no responden a la tarea de la época. Ninguna de esas familias ha logrado responder correctamente a la situación y por eso ha primado la crisis en muchas de ellas. Yo no me quiero referir a tal o cual. Yo vengo de una de esas familias que estalló también en los 90, por lo tanto creo que todos los que en algún momento hemos intentado construirnos desde ahí, no lo hemos logrado. Por eso creemos que en el plano internacional lo que está planteado es intentar superar las viejas corrientes de las cuales venimos y tratar de conformar una nueva corriente internacional, donde podamos convivir los distintos sectores, ¿no es cierto?, que hemos intentado desde distintas maneras ¿no es cierto?, trasladarle a los trabajadores que la única perspectiva es el socialismo mundial, que hay que derrotar el capitalismo. No es una tarea fácil reagruparse entre distintas corrientes o entre compañeros que venimos de distintas experiencias. Tenemos que tener mucha paciencia entre nosotros, tenemos que saber trabajar en un marco donde podemos tener muchos acuerdos, pero también podemos llegar a tener muchos matices, pero el objetivo mayor tiene que ser dar los pasos para intentar conformar una organización nueva. Nosotros en la LIC convivimos en cerca de 30, 35 países, compañeros, como les digo, que venimos de distintas alternativas. Ahora, ¿qué nos unió? Primero, una interpretación común de lo que está pasando en el mundo, que es muy importante, que tengamos una interpretación común de lo que está pasando, que tratemos de buscar políticas comunes para responder a los grandes hechos de la lucha de clases, que tengamos, no digo un programa acabado, pero sí en cuenta que necesitamos ponernos de acuerdo en las 10 o 15 tareas más importantes que tenemos que resolver para intentar responder a las necesidades de los trabajadores, las necesidades de los pueblos. Y por sobre todas las cosas, un método nuevo. Yo creo que tenemos que rediscutir el método de las distintas corrientes que llegaron hasta acá, porque lamentablemente, incluso las corrientes que veníamos del trotskismo, muchas veces hemos mamado mucho del estalinismo y hemos construido métodos burocráticos, métodos que no nos han permitido fortalecer las organizaciones, sino que ante el primer debate, la primera discusión, lo que primó es el estallido. O sea, tenemos que reaprender entre todos nosotros cómo conformar, cómo reagruparnos los revolucionarios. Ahora, si no logramos reagruparnos entre nosotros, difícilmente podamos responder a la tarea que está planteada. Por eso creo que hay que hacer un esfuerzo para eso. Y esto que es algo internacional, también es un esfuerzo que tenemos que hacer en el plano nacional. Yo sé que seguramente aquí hay dos grupos o dos sectores que se están reagrupando. Hay muchos más por fuera, seguramente, que no están en esta reunión, sino hay otros grupos que están intentando resolver. Ahora, hay que dar un primer paso para nosotros, que es discutir si esta es la tarea fundamental. Mire, la LIS no se autoproclama una nueva internacional, porque sabemos que estamos lejos de ser una internacional en el sentido de lo que es una verdadera internacional, ¿no es cierto?, que se postule y que tenga peso en el movimiento de masas en algunos países. Ahora, si aspiramos a colaborar para construir esa nueva internacional y nos reagrupamos en torno a ese objetivo, yo creo que la gran tarea que tienen ustedes en uno de los principales países del mundo es ver si pueden empezar a ponerse de acuerdo en que la tarea es empezar a reagruparse con el objetivo de empezar a dar pasos en la construcción de un partido revolucionario. Porque es cierto de que mañana no se va a construir un partido revolucionario que no depende solo de nosotros, pero si no se empieza a dar el primer paso, ojo que se corre el riesgo de no llegar nunca a construirlo. Hace falta por lo menos un polo consciente que se plantee esta tarea y que no sea una tarea ni sectaria, que se autoproclame como que ya resolvió los problemas, pero que dé el primer paso. Porque si no hay alguien que da el primer paso, es muy difícil después avanzar en reagruparse con otros. Entonces yo, por lo menos de la experiencia nuestra a nivel internacional, es que dar el primer paso, empezar a reagruparnos, los que tenemos una comprensión común de lo que está pasando en el mundo, de esta necesidad de empezar a dar pasos hacia la construcción en el plano internacional de una internacional, en los planos locales de un partido revolucionario, dar este primer paso es un punto fundamental, un punto fundamental. Y yo creo que los que tenemos más o menos algunos puntos de acuerdo, vale la pena hacer este esfuerzo. Por eso felicitamos a los compañeros de Horizonte Socialista que han tenido esta iniciativa, que han empezado a plantear este debate y esta tarea. Nosotros vamos a ayudar y a colaborar. Hemos charlado incluso con los compañeros de Alternativa Socialista de Australia. Nos hemos reunido incluso porque vemos un problema en Estados Unidos. O sea, el mundo mira a Estados Unidos, los socialistas revolucionarios miramos a Estados Unidos y lamentablemente en Estados Unidos hoy no hay un polo revolucionario fuerte. Ahora, nosotros queremos ayudar a dar los primeros pasos en eso y estamos dispuestos a hacer todos los esfuerzos que tengamos a nivel internacional para ayudar a los compañeros que en Estados Unidos quieran dar estos primeros pasos. Para nosotros sería muy importante entre estas dos organizaciones que están acá si se empieza a abrir un diálogo en este sentido, porque permitiría empezar desde ahí a dialogar con otros sectores. O sea, ahora, el problema central es si nos animamos a dar el primer paso o no. Si no nos animamos a dar el primer paso, hasta esperar que haya más condiciones objetivas y subjetivas, corremos el riesgo de perder una oportunidad. En Estados Unidos se están fortaleciendo direcciones que no tendrían que ser la dirección que se fortalezca en un proceso como este. Sectores neoestalinistas, el reformismo anda dando una gira por todo Estados Unidos para intentarse postular como alternativa, y lo que falta son los revolucionarios postulándose como una alternativa frente a esto. Sí, somos pequeños todavía, pero para hacer algo grande se empieza por un primer paso. Si no hay primer paso, nunca vamos a lograr construir algo grande. Entonces yo creo que ustedes tienen un desafío tremendo, y es ahora el desafío de empezar a reagruparse para empezar a dar los primeros pasos para construir un partido revolucionario. Sin sectarismo, sin autoproclamación, para llamar a otros a que sigan este ejemplo. Porque hay más revolucionarios aparte de los que están acá. Hay muchos revolucionarios en Estados Unidos. El problema es que están esperando muchos de ellos a alguien que les mire, que les guíe el camino. Y yo creo que esa es la tarea que tenemos planteado. En el plano internacional, nosotros sabemos que no somos la internacional que hace falta, pero la colaboración nuestra es tratar de ayudar a reagrupar a los revolucionarios para que estemos por lo menos cada día un poquito más cerca de ese objetivo. Y creo que esa es la tarea que tienen planteado también ustedes. Empezar a dar los primeros pasos reagrupándose, aunque seamos poquitos, para crear la llama que pueda ser seguida después por otros. Y ojo, que ante el tremendo ataque de la clase que está sufriendo la clase trabajadora y los pueblos, va a haber una reacción. Incluso este nuevo cambio que se está produciendo en el mapa mundial puede generar que a nivel de la conciencia mucha gente empiece a pensar y a mirar hacia la izquierda. El hecho de que la burguesía esté abandonando la democracia como sistema, que durante mucho tiempo permitió confundir a los trabajadores, porque el imperialismo estadounidense se mostraba como la alternativa democrática frente a los regímenes autoritarios, que hoy el imperialismo estadounidense esté abandonando la democracia y se transforme en una fuerza de ultraderecha, va a abrirle cabeza a sectores de los trabajadores en Estados Unidos y a nivel mundial. Ahora, si esa cabeza que se empieza a abrir no encuentra nadie que le guíe mínimamente el camino, se va a perder una oportunidad. Y yo creo que la tarea nuestra es dejar de desaprovechar oportunidades. Los revolucionarios tenemos que empezar a ponernos como objetivo, empezar a aprovechar las oportunidades, aunque sean mínimas hoy en día. Porque, vuelvo a insistir, y tomando el ejemplo que no sé qué dijo Jordan con relación al compañero que primero esté de los bolcheviques, porque no me la dijo a mí, no me la contó a mí, pero coincido en ese tema, que tenemos más acuerdos que los tenían los bolcheviques, pero también hay que tomar otra de los bolcheviques. Eran un pequeño grupo unos años antes de la revolución. Eran grupos dispersos, por toda Rusia, estaban dispersos en pequeños círculos socialistas. La tarea de Lenin fue intentar unir esos pequeños grupos, unirlos alrededor del periódico, unirlos alrededor de una organización. Y gracias a que empezó a reagrupar a esos pequeños grupos que estaban dispersos, unos años después pudo resolver el problema de los problemas, el problema de la dirección. Si no empezamos ahora, compañeros, nunca vamos a llegar al objetivo de que haya una dirección revolucionaria de masas. Tenemos que hacer el esfuerzo nosotros para dar los primeros pasos y ver cómo el devenir nos lleva a cada vez avanzar más en agruparnos con otros. Nosotros somos optimistas sobre la situación mundial. Somos optimistas de la situación mundial porque creemos que la clase trabajadora va a dar batalla, no se va a dejar arrastrar, que el movimiento de masa no va a dejar que le saquen cada una de las conquistas que con sangre conquistó durante las últimas décadas. Va a dar pelea y va a buscar a ver ¿qué respuesta se le puede dar a ella? Bueno, seamos nosotros los que empecemos a darle, aunque sea en la dimensión que cada uno de nosotros podamos. Porque si hacemos eso, creo que vamos a responder a la tarea que tenemos los revolucionarios hoy, que es empezar a dar pequeños pasos en reagruparnos nacional e internacionalmente para responder al problema de los problemas, que es dar pasos en la construcción de partidos revolucionarios, que es la tarea de la hora. Bueno, nada más, disculpen la vehemencia, pero creo que todos estamos en un momento donde realmente la situación es tan aguda que nos tiene que llevar a ser vehementes entre nosotros para responder a la tarea de las tareas, que es avanzar en la construcción de una dirección revolucionaria, mundial y nacional. Gracias.
Thank you, comrade. We feel that urgency. We feel that need for a first step and that we must step towards each other. That was a very powerful argument for why we are here tonight, to regroup and to build the strongest possible revolutionary party. Thank you so much, comrade. If you're hearing that in English, you can leave your setting where it is for the rest of the meeting, and the rest of the meeting will be in English. We have one final speaker. We're really, really happy that Jordan Humphreys from our comrade group in Australia, Socialist Alternative, is going to come and speak now on the same question of the need for a revolutionary party. Jordan, thank you for coming, and please go ahead and take the floor.
Awesome. And thanks so much for having me, comrades. It's really refreshing to be in a meeting with revolutionaries in the United States who aren't disinterested in, patching up some of the bad parts of the system or trying to push the Democrats a bit to the left or whatever, but are actually about, tearing the head off the system and building a revolutionary alternative to it. A lot of the newer comrades that I know here, they ask a lot when they're looking at all the crazy stuff that's going in the United States, what's happening with the revolutionary left. They want to know, like, are they, getting together, they're organizing, they're expanding their influence. So it's really, brilliant to see that there's a bunch of comrades coming together to discuss these issues and work out next steps. Something which really drove home to me the need for revolutionary organization and a mass revolutionary party in the future was when I was visiting South America at the end of last year. I went to Argentina and met up with comrades in the MST, but I also went to Chile. And partly I went there because it was the 5th anniversary of the 2019 revolt that people probably remember, a huge movement against the neoliberal government and all the attacks going on, so heroic and impressive. But one of the really revealing and confronting things about it was 5 years after that revolt, it left relatively little legacy in Chile. Like, we spoke to a lot of young people who were involved in the revolt. A lot of them didn't even want to talk to us about it. They were like, oh, we tried to change the world, we failed. It's really sad. I don't want to talk to you about that anymore. A lot of the left groups had anniversary events to talk about what happened, the way forward, what we can learn from it, and so forth. And a lot of people found it really difficult to grapple with that, considering what happened. And there was a lot of political confusion because the Boric government had co-opted a whole section of the activist movement around it, had tried to diffuse that and channel that in a way which had nothing to do with the original inspiration behind the revolt. And the thing that really drove home to me is a lot of the time, even in Australia and in our revolutionary group, you can feel like, oh, one day there'll be a big movement, mass struggle, mass protest, and then that will solve all our problems, because then everyone becomes a revolutionary, then things will be fantastic. And obviously that would be a fantastic step forward, but we need to build organization as well. It's not enough to just wait and hope for a future rebellion to break out to resolve the difficulties to the left. It also reminded me of something that Lenin talks about and what is to be done. A lot of people try and accuse him of being a substitutionalist for the mass struggles of workers, but it's actually the opposite. The reason why he was so strong on the question of the Revolutionary Party was not because he didn't have faith in the ability of workers to transform the world. It's because he did have faith. He knew that they were the ones who were going to fight back and struggle against the system, and therefore that there was a realistic basis to think that a mass revolutionary party could be formed out of that if people were willing to do the hard work of making that actually come about. Now, of course, as a number of the speakers have said, we can't click our fingers and magic up a mass revolutionary party out of nowhere. And anyone who says that, is just kind of bullshitting you. Across the world, we don't have the necessary forces to make that happen in an immediate sense. And it can be really difficult dealing with that gap between the objective need for mass revolutionary parties, considering everything that's going on, and what we're able to do in the here and now. But I think that shouldn't paralyze us. It should spur us on to do everything we can to start to build with the forces that we have. I think that's also important because there's been a lot of debates around the question of revolutionary organization in recent years, on the international left, particularly in the English-speaking world. And a number of those debates have really been kind of distractions and diversions from a lot of the main issues. So for a whole period, there was a real enthusiasm for kind of neo-reformist parties, broad left parties of various different sorts. I'm sure many comrades are familiar with that, which were often posed as the idea that revolutionary politics is so marginal, they'll never break out, they'll never be relevant. Instead, we need a new broad thing, and maybe reform versus revolution doesn't really matter anymore, and people are exaggerating its significance, and aren't you so sectarian for talking about revolution when we just need, big, broad organizations in order to push the left forward? And that could seem to respond to a real desperate need to rebuild the workers' movement, the left, in a situation of crisis and the rise of the far right and so forth. But as we've seen throughout the years, these projects have not taken the left forward. In country after country, they have led to demoralization and division because the politics of these organizations cannot stand up to capitalism, let alone get anywhere close to revolution. They can't even lead to serious advances in the interests of the oppressed and the exploited. And a number of comrades talked about the reasons why, but that's been really driven home. Example after example: Corbyn, Sanders, Podemos, Syriza. And I see there's people today saying, "Oh, we just need another new left broad party," and it's as if that never happened. Amnesia about it, but we all have seen what has happened, and how that enthusiasm can quickly lead to demoralization. The other kind of issue which has come up a lot, I think, is people looking towards mass movements and activism, which is absolutely key and important, obviously, to reviving the left, and any revolutionary organization worth its salt would be throwing themselves into that. But that can become a substitute for trying to build organizations.
I forgot that I took it out of my pocket.
Go on mute, comrade. Because, all the activism and movement work in the world, while really important, can't be a substitute for also building revolutionary organizations that can cohere the courage and heroism of people into stable, ongoing groups that can draw out the lessons from the struggles, their strengths and weaknesses, that can broaden out and unite different struggles that are going on, particularly in the moment where there's so many different groups in society that are under attack in a variety of different ways. So it's really important that we build and convince people of that. And that was one of the big projects for us in Socialist Alternative in the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, which has in the United States and many countries has been the enormous issue that has really politicized so many young people, has totally transformed things for a whole generation of people I know in Australia, like made the question of US imperialism so on the forefront of their minds in the way that it wasn't a few years ago, really. Lots of young people, I don't think, even knew what Palestine was, 5 or 6 years ago in Australia, to be honest. Whereas now it's become such a burning issue. But we've managed to combine throwing ourselves into that, playing a really key role in the national and citywide organizations and the student encampments and some of the trade union work that's gone around Palestine, and use that to also convince a minority of people why they need to be revolutionary Marxists and need to continue fighting the system which has produced the horror of what's going on in Gaza. So yeah, there's some of the diversions and distractions. And in general, like, there's obviously a long history of revolutionary organizations that have gone off the rails for 1,000,001 different reasons which have come up, both their own internal problems, the broad situation they're in, and so forth. But that can't, I think, allow us to give up on the project of building a revolutionary organization. We have to debate through and think through what is the best kind of organization we want, what are the organizational norms it should have, its politics, its strategies, its way of building, its way of relating to other organizations. But none of that gets around the central question of building the kind of organization we need. Similarly, considering the instability of capitalist politics and the threat of the far right, it's undoubtedly the case, I think, that in coming years, we're going to see all sorts of new, broad left formations arise in response to that kind of situation in different countries. And revolutionaries have to work out how do they concretely relate to those organizations and individuals when they arise. And so many differences in context that kind of shapes that. But even where they do emerge, that again doesn't get rid of the need for independent revolutionary organizations that can bring together the most radical and critical socialists around clear politics for workers' power and revolution. Now, all this can seem like an enormous task, of course, but there's no way around it, and it's absolutely vital. In our own experience in Socialist Alternative, it's a modest experience. We're not a mass revolutionary party, nowhere close, unfortunately. But this weekend, as as Bill, I think, mentioned, it's Marxism conference that we're having here in Melbourne. And we've really built it up to be a serious institution. We've got 1,200 people here who have come over the weekend, which is really awesome. Our biggest conference yet. It's also the 30th anniversary of our organization this year. And for those 30 years, we've gone from a group of 40 people to 630. And that, is still way inadequate compared to the crisis of capitalism. But, it's a serious achievement that we've been able to do that over the last couple of decades and build up a whole layer of really amazing cadre activists, of young people are taking a lead in the student work and the trade unions. We've become a much more multiracial, multi-ethnic organization, particularly over the last couple of years, which reflects some of the changes going on in society. The majority of organizations is women, which is a real important thing. It's what you should have considering the majority of the population. And it has a real base amongst young radical people in particular. But that took like a lot of hard work. Most of the time it's not that glamorous or that amazing what you're doing. We're just, having little chats with people at cafes, talking through revolutionary politics. For a long time, I was in the Sydney branch of the organization. It was one of the smaller branches. It took us many years to like really build it up, get some confidence, some momentum, a clear idea about what we're trying to do. But we all have to start somewhere to try and cohere the people that we know that are out there that want a revolutionary alternative to this system. So best of luck, comrades, with your discussions and everything. A number of us are going to be visiting America in July, as long as your border security let us through the doors. We'll see. But it'll be great to meet you in person and continue these discussions about revolutionary organization around the world.